TopMedTalk.
Well, hello and welcome to TopMedTalk. We are in Seattle, Washington this weekend, attending the 2024 annual meeting of the IARS and SOCA. I'm Desiree Chappell. I'm your host today, and I'm joined by former editor-in-chief of TopMedTalk, Monty Mythen.
Desiree, it's good to be back. What's an IARS?
I was just going to have you do it.
I'll do the first bit. The International Anesthesia Research Society.
That's right. And SOCA, the Society of Critical Care Anesthesiologists.
Yeah, IARS has been around for a good time, and it is what it says on the can, I think. We've been here before.
We have. We were here actually last year. And Girl Cop was with us. You guys might have been here. I was not. This is my second one. It does.
But this is different because we're actually decided to attend the meeting this year as part of our CME, etc. So therefore, we're doing our podcasting away from the immediate meeting.
Yeah. I actually had a poster, Monty.
Did you? Well done.
I did. It's one of my first. I know. I was very excited. It was our one on intraoperative hypotension and spine.
Excellent. So it's a great meeting for that.
It is.
It's one of the most academic meetings.
Yeah.
Lots of posters.
The posters were great.
It's a relatively small audience, but very, very high caliber audience, and the presentations are excellent.
Today, Monty, we have someone new coming to the podcast as our guest. We have Professor Jaideep Pandit. He is a professor at the University of Oxford and editor-in-chief of Anesthesia and Analgesia. Jaideep, if I may, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. Delighted to be here.
Yeah.
And Jaideep, the journal has something to do with the IARS or the other way around, is that right?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, the journal is owned by, it's part of the IARS. So as editor-in-chief, I report to the board of trustees of the IARS. But it's independent. It's obviously editorially independent. So it's just for oversight and governance as per the arrangements.
Excellent.
Wonderful. Well, for our listeners, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey to become editor-in-chief of the ANA?
Gosh, yes. How long have you got? Because
a while.
At my age, life history is taking increasingly longer to outline. I've been in Oxford for a long time. I've been a consultant, as we call it, attending in the US for 26 years now. And in terms of the editorial roles, I've been editing for a while. I have an interest in publishing, but the editing side is also an interest. I was editor for 12 years at the UK journal Anaesthesia, and finished off as what they call senior editor, so deputy editor-in-chief. And then after that, after a short gap, this opportunity came up, and I was just delighted to be elected to this role as editor-in-chief of Anesthesia and Analgesia. I mean, I have a range of research interests, from laboratory science to clinical themes in airway management and vascular, and increasingly in operating room management. So a broad range, which is useful in terms of assessing and overseeing the management of a diverse set of papers.
Yeah.
And for those listeners who are not so close to anesthesia per se, you can argue about the ranking and how one ranks different journals, but it is definitely one of the highest ranked journals in the world in the space.
It is. And, people say the top four, and it's definitely been there forever. It's the oldest journal, over 100 years old, and it's biggest in several ways, and we're proud particularly it's the most read by a long way. People talk about impact factors, which is quite a complex sort of mathematical analysis of how frequently papers are cited and so on. But I think more importantly is the readability and the accessibility. So that's the part we're proud of. And our strapline is sort of the global journal, and it is really global in its outreach, both in the editorial board and the readership and our connections with affiliate societies that are linked to the journal.
Yeah.
And we look through the pages of it, people not familiar with the structure of journals. You have a lot of names at the sort of front end of the journal from around the world. You just explain a little bit about what they do. And
so the front page, what we call the masthead page, that showcases mainly what's called the section editors. These are the handling editors of the journal, and they're divided by the themes that they're specialist in. And those themes, and this relates to your earlier question around the structure of the journal and the sort of governance of it. For historical reasons, we have a number of affiliate societies, and they have, as it were, editorial representation on the board. So we have quite a large range of themes covered, be it from critical care to perioperative medicine to airway, obstetrics, and so on. My role is to maintain that, expand that, but also with an eye on geographical reach and representation of those individuals. The subsequent pages are different categories of editor. They're not the handling editors, and they form more a supporting role for the section editors, who are the main team, the primary team, as it were.
And I'm hoping from having been involved in this a little bit in the past, not at your level, but that means it's easier to get reviews done.
Absolutely, yeah. And one thing we're proud of is increasingly rapid review process. This is important to authors, and it's something we monitor and continue to improve on that. So we have access to a very wide team.
So for people who are not used to it, we send in manuscripts and you send it out to people to give their views on the quality of it.
Exactly. And happy to share our processes with you. Quite open. Everything that comes in comes to me, so I read it first, every single paper, letter. And then I assess it for distribution to the handling editor, the section editor, accordingly. And in turn, they will send it out to a range of reviewers, including statistical reviewers, and then it comes back with a decision and the system goes around in circles. That said, there is something called a desk rejection, where we can assess very quickly, either myself or the handling editor, that there is no way, unfortunately, the authors can rectify the problems, and we will then desk reject that paper. But that's rarer than a full review.
One of the challenges we have in that, and we had a discussion recently with Kate Leslie about it, is diversity in every sense of the word.
This is what's exciting about ANA. As I referred to earlier, there's a natural diversity in our global reach. The affiliate societies, and in particular, but I refer to others as well, but in particular, the WFSA, the World Federation of Societies of Anaesthesia, has representation. They're an affiliate society, and that automatically gives us geographical reach. And coupled with geographical reach comes ethnic diversity. But the other forms of diversity, of course, gender diversity, and that's important too. And it's a big topic and issue in the UK, in the US as well, about the intrinsic barriers to the advance of women, particularly in academic medicine. And simply recognizing them, leveling the playing field, is all that's important to improve that. But the other aspect of diversity is around intellectual diversity, to ensure that all themes are represented, all subspecialties, and particularly basic science. And in that regard, I've been proud of increasing the number of section editors in the basic science themes.
Excellent. So my last bit before handing over is the online versus print. So traditionally the journals, when we were growing up, I'm not going to put you in the same age bracket as me, broadly speaking. So our departments we worked in academic centres, there were piles and piles and piles of paper journals in the different journals, because we all got one, and the piles got bigger and bigger. How are we now from the point of view of giving that up and going to online, partially or only?
Interesting question. As we sit here, of the major journals, the top four, ANA remains the only one continuing in hard copy as well as online. And there are reasons for that. I mean, most of those reasons are actually quite pedestrian, quite mundane. They relate to publisher contracts and what's normally done and what's budgeted and so on. But you're quite right, Monty, that as we go forward, clearly if we're the only one, the direction of travel is online. Now, that all said, we do have an online presence. We are an online journal. The majority, if not all our articles now, it's not quite all, but the majority of our articles are published ahead of print anyway. So they go online straight away. And in fact, part of that drive has been from authors. Authors are very keen, they need the publication for their next grant or their next piece of work or application, be it career applications or whatever, and that's really important to them. So we've moved forward very quickly to ensure that that happens. Will the future be online only? Well, yes, ultimately it will be. There is still a cultural preference for the hard copy. Our UK journals found that when they surveyed members. But ultimately, just as our phones and our computers are pushing us online, this is inevitable. And we're all comfortable with that.
And with that is the tricky question, which everyone can see, is, therefore, who pays for what? If it's ideally going to be open source as well, how do we reconcile that?
I'll sort of correct you, as it were, slightly. So there are two different things, being online and being open access. So we can go online, as other journals have, without changing the publishing model. That's still a society model. Open access is a completely different kettle of fish. Obviously, in order to have open access, you have to be online. So it's a sine qua non, but it is a different thing. Open access is a much more complex beast. It's easy to imagine it's a one-size-fits-all or a binary question, you're open access or not. There are actually different levels of open access, different types, different models of actually who's paying. There's the complexity that I won't go into, what's called transformative arrangements in terms of publishing. I could go on forever. It's not a threat. It's not something, we've analysed it. It's not something that we view as a threat in all its forms. Certainly there's one extreme form that could be a threat where governments dictate that all journals must be open access in all their papers that they publish. Something like that, which is an extreme diktat, would be more of a threat to the anesthesia community and authors and academic departments than necessarily the journal. Our journal fundamentally is a subscription to a society journal. So we know that the society, the IARS, its members and related interested individuals will always read the journal under whatever model it's published in. So we have that degree of sort of security going forward, but we're comfortable with the online developments.
Tell us a little bit more about the types of manuscripts that you are working with and the type of research that you're really focusing on for ANA.
Gosh, well, it's back to that diversity.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. Now everything, anything goes.
Everything. And I could categorize it. We organize it for organizational purposes into appropriate sections: pediatric, obstetric, critical perioperative medicine, difficult airway work. I could go on. Basic sciences, pain, chronic pain, acute pain, basic science pain, everything. I would stress the new sort of article types. So authors quite correctly are challenging us with increasing complexities of papers. An example of that is the AI, the artificial intelligence space. The structure, the type of papers that are submitted are very different. And I hark back to Monty's allusion to the good old days. The traditional format is changing when they're discussing how AI is applied to solve clinical problems. And we're having to adapt paper types accordingly. I've opened up letters, correspondence to be freestanding. Under the old model, they had to be about a published paper. And I said, look, actually just submit your thoughts to us open-endedly and we will consider publishing those. We have a new type of article called the research letter, which is where authors do a study, and it's a very simple study with a single endpoint. They can just shorten the paper and essentially just publish the results with the core details of methodology. And the advantage of that is rapid publication. Yeah. Review articles and guidelines are still very popular, and this is where our relationship with the affiliate societies is really important because members, colleagues out there in the front line of practicing anesthesia, they want readily accessible guidelines. And we're very encouraging of publishing guidelines in accessible formats. And the other dimension that's important, and it's back to that online presence, is what I call our digital space. So in addition to the traditional article, there's a whole lot of digital information attached to it, not just online supplementary material that provides information, but what we call infographics, visual abstracts that summarize the article in different visual ways, digitally, podcasts, and interviews like this.
Are the young engaging?
Yeah.
Because the review process is time consuming.
Yeah.
And everyone's pretty stressed now. It's not remunerated. General review process.
No, it isn't. And I can answer that in several ways. I mean, to link with the digital space, I was going to finish off by talking about our social media editors who push out and summarize articles. And of course, the article structure has changed accordingly a little bit. We have a key points section, which is particularly useful for the social media editors to then tweet and push out through, LinkedIn and other channels. On the pipeline aspect of reviewing, at this conference, we've had 2 very successful peer review workshops directed at our younger colleagues who are very keen and enthusiastic to get involved in the review process. So we formalized that training for them, credentialized it, and that's been hugely successful. We know that from the feedback. There's one other initiative which we're about to launch. It's just finalized, and watch this space so you have the scoop on this one.
That's right. All right. You heard it here first, folks.
Which is the editorial fellowship scheme. And this is to create a structure. In fact, it's something that I started way back in Anesthesia, and then the BJA sort of copied it and expanded it, and we, being even bigger journal, are able to have many more editorial fellows. And the idea is that early career researchers, senior residents, trainees can apply and essentially shadow a section editor for a year, or 2 section editors, 6-month periods, and really learn firsthand about manuscript handling, review, what happens to a manuscript in its journey. And that's going to create a future pool of interested reviewers.
And with those, do they get just the opportunity, or do they also get a little bit of time to buy them out of some work?
Under the current proposed model, it's not funded, and that's going to be difficult. And of course, given that they're from very heterogeneous situations, some of them will be residents in training, some of them will be early career researchers. We're particularly targeting and encouraging colleagues in lower middle income countries to apply. All their needs are going to be different. So we've, at present, found it difficult to anticipate what they are. Well, I think we'll go into this in an open-ended way, but we will continue monitoring and see if funding might be needed in future.
And for those people who've never tried peer reviewing, there's no bar to giving it a go. There's no absolute bar to entry, is there? Let's imagine people are sitting out there.
They're interested in becoming.
They don't think they're an academic.
Yeah.
They don't think. Sorry, I didn't express that very well. They kind of thinking, I've got strong opinions about this paper, but I'm not in the club. So if I was prepared to offer a peer review input, I mean, not everyone's going to be successful at it, but is there?
I would suggest simply doing it off the street, as it were, is not to be recommended. It could end in tears for parties. I mean, anyone's enthusiasm, that's fantastic to hear, but we strongly encourage them to engage in a peer review training workshop to understand what that is about. And we structure it as a basic peer review workshop and an advanced peer review workshop. So it is very formalized. And
do those only happen here at the annual meeting? Or are there other opportunities?
Great question, because they've started here at the annual meeting. In fact, the pioneer was my Deputy Editor-in-Chief, Tom Vetter, and it's evolved over time. But we are now going to franchise it, as it were, share it with our affiliate societies. So even at this conference, not only have the junior colleagues who've signed up for the workshops attended, but a whole host of editors and co-editors and members of affiliate societies as observers to learn from the process as well.
That's great.
So there will be more and more opportunities for that.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to ask you a bit of inside information. It's not unusual for people when they get a lot of pushback on their articles. There's initially an anger process they have to go through. That's common. And then, but if they think
it's the grieving process,
if they think they've had a very unfair rub of the green and they think they've really got a case they could countermake, do they come back to you?
No, they do. The hard reality is that we reject about 80% of the articles. It's 20% acceptance rate. It's a very competitive process. It's difficult to change that, and it's peer review driven. So ultimately, our colleagues out there, it's not a decision I'm making, or even the handling editors are making, it's the peer reviewers. So it is tough. That all said, we get it wrong, authors get it wrong, there are mistakes in the process. So the door is always open for an appeal, and it's quite simple. Authors write to me and lay out their concerns, and I will take a second look and, if necessary, send it out for re-review. When I take a second look, I'm going to merely look, were the proper processes followed? Were the reviews proportionate and fair? And we will review where appropriate.
Well, not a lot of people appreciate it.
No, it's true.
Because if you've been involved in the handling editor sort of level, as you're saying, you put it out to peer reviewers, they sort of score it, let's call it that.
Yeah.
And if you don't make the cut, you don't make the cut.
Yeah.
But the handling editor can have a view on that.
Yeah.
But it very rarely gets up as far as you. Is that correct? Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So the majority of decisions are accepted by authors. They are straightforward, but sometimes we do have that grey zone. I should add here, we have our sister journal, A&A Practice.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
Again, it started a while ago, and it's essentially a case report journal, but it could and should be much more. And we are expanding the article themes and types that ought to go in it.
So, I've heard a lot about quality improvement and some other...
Absolutely. Quality improvement, surveys, case series, observational studies, bench studies, innovation studies. There's a whole host of article types. And this is important, I think, and it relates to Monty's question, because when we do the statistics, it's those article types that they're very interesting and they're very publishable. And a lot of hard work's gone into them, and they contain useful information. But in the competitive world of the main journal, they never score so highly, which is unfortunate for the authors. So there is a means of using our sister journal to accommodate articles and allow that outlet for authors to share their products with the anaesthesia community. So watch this space as that's formalized and we sort of restructure to smooth. I mean, it's already available as a mechanism, but we want to smooth the process and make it much quicker for that to happen.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions, for those early career researchers or For those of us who are not academic, who are doing some really innovative quality improvement, different things that we want to be able to share out, it's a little bit of a tough road for some of us.
Yeah. And ANA practice is a great place to start for that.
Yeah.
It's a great place to start because of that flexibility, greater flexibility of articles.
So any other kind of ideas or recommendations for those of us who are wanting to get into this space a little bit more or starting our careers?
Training is really important, not only training in the course of the institution that you're at, mentorship locally, but conferences like this. I referred to workshops. Another workshop that we, the Journal, are doing is a how to write manuscripts workshop, a how to get published workshop. There we share the pitfalls, things to do, things not to do, and that's fully, signed up. In fact, that'll be later this afternoon. So I think that's important. Fundamentally, give it a go. I think the team together, do the writing and go for it, submit, because the only way to learn is through that process of going through it and getting the feedback. Tough though it will be, there are outlets, there will be a way forward for good material.
Oh, there's just a ton to learn on those reviews. I mean, when you review, sometimes you get some really good ones that you're like,
they've been looked at by very senior, very eminent colleagues in the field, and their insights are valuable, even if the final decision's negative. There's always something to learn.
Final question from me. And we've done a little bit about TopMedTalk recently. AI, from the point of view of generating false data, from the point of view of automatically writing papers, which is obviously a downside, but then the upside of improving the review process by incorporating AI. That's quite a headache at the moment.
You're right. The big concern is about data fabrication. Years ago, I worked with John Carlisle and Steve Schaefer, who is a past editor of this journal. John Carlisle developed the technique, and then we developed it further. It's a statistical method of detecting fraudulent data. While it's not standard that we apply it to every article, it's there as a tool if and when we suspect things. One limitation of it, we can't apply it to an N of one article. We need a series of articles for it to be robust. So we're aware of that problem, and we do have countermeasures, and we are using them. The second area of AI is where authors are using AI to write the text. So the data's fine, but the rest of it is written by AI. Now, we accept that, particularly from non-English speaking authors, because we don't see it as any different from buying a translator service or getting a third party to do the translation, so long as they declare it. So long as they declare it. And of course, the problem for authors, of course, is that very often the AI isn't very good. So it's always, it can be bad language as well. So I'm not suggesting we recommend it, but that so long as they declare it, it's not something we regard on the same scale as fraudulent data at all. The third, and Monty's raised this third thing about using AI as a technology to help review. And I'm not aware of tools that yet make that judgment, as it were, of importance and veracity, but perhaps they are available and will come online.
You can imagine. I don't think it would be that complicated to say there's been 23 previous articles written in this space, of which 7 of them were missed out in the reference list.
A sort of a check,
an overview. Imagine that being helpful.
That's an interesting idea. I'll take that forward.
And therefore, you just get it as a sort of tee-up report.
Yes.
And one of the things from the point of view of using it to help you write the article. Particularly if you're English speaking and you're well known in the space, you're going to get quite a lot of self-plagiarism. What do you do about that?
Oh, well, no, we do have, the plagiarism software is getting increasingly sophisticated. It detects plagiarism, self-plagiarism, copied text from not just published articles, but from everywhere, any source across the world, and identifies it very accurately. So we're quite comfortable with that aspect. A copied text is relatively an easy win. The AI idea is really intriguing, and of course, it's that filtering process is going to be the problem. So I'm alluding here to things like meta-analyses, where, say someone does a meta-analysis of 16 studies, and they publish it, and then the next day we get a letter saying, since the author submitted the article, these 2 studies have been published. Now, what does one? I mean, I'm not speaking just as a journal editor, but what do the authors do? What does the anesthesia community do?
Yeah.
And what would be ideal, I think, and I think the AI discussion is relevant, is where you have a sort of living repository of the data, so that the first meta-analysis becomes the template, and onto that is bolted on the new studies that come online, and it's a living evolutionary document that changes its p-value and its odds ratio as more information comes online. Whether that's possible and whether AI will help that, because that will automatically filter the article type that should be entered into the meta-analysis, and that might be an appropriate way forward for those types of studies.
Jaideep, thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
Pleasure. It's it's very, very, although people are attracted by these jobs, it's very difficult to actually get people to be prepared to make the final step and do it.
To do the job.
It's a huge amount of work.
It is.
And
but pleasurable.
A lot of time on the road, etc. So thank you. And thank you for all the innovative changes you've made so far. I know there'll be a lot more. The nature of the man, if you see what I mean. But thank you.
No, my pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's how we drive people to be able to submit whenever they are concerned that they've never done that before. Yeah. Having these types of conversations are so wonderful to be able to open it up to say, we all can participate in this.
No, the whole changes are to make that author the ability to submit easier.
Yeah.
The website has improved. It's easier to click on the buttons. We don't even require the article to be in any particular format, so long as it's readable.
Okay.
Even if it's been rejected by another journal that has a specific format, just click it over to us when you're ready.
Well, that's good information. Yeah, no, that's great information. Absolutely. We will definitely signpost everyone.
Thank you.
To the journal and to that submission page. I think that's really important to have.
Great.
And again, as Monty said, thank you so much for all that you do. And thanks for joining us on TopMedTalk today.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for listening to TopMedTalk. You can find more great conversations like this at TopMedTalk.com or on your favorite podcatcher. We are on social media, X, LinkedIn, Facebook. We are there. The X and Twitter thing, I can't ever get. Oh, and YouTube. That's what I wanted to say. We are on YouTube now. If you found us on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Every little bit helps us to keep all of TopMedTalk free and open access to the world. Thanks so much for listening.
TopMedTalk.
Thanks for downloading TopMedTalk. Don't forget to subscribe. Check us out on YouTube and, of course, on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook and X. Also, it's important to remember that TopMedTalk is the broadcasting arm of EdPom, evidence-based perioperative medicine. We'd love you to find out more about that, and the way to do that is edpom.org. Check out our website and find out about some of the incredible conferences we're going to be arranging across the year. edpom.org.